We're very proud, very happy. First of all, he's Spanish, and most of all, he's Argentinian, you know?
This was probably the most emotional thing that I ever felt.
And I'm glad he's the Pope, because I'm very happy for all these Spanish people.
Argentina!
Well, that was some of the reaction from New York's Argentinian community with news of the new Pope, one of their own, and as we said, history. The first time in more than a millennium that a Pope has come outside of Europe, and the first time ever from the Americas. Now, 72% of the Latin American population is Catholic, and 39% of Catholics worldwide live in Latin America. Argentina's got the 11th largest Roman Catholic population around the globe. So how much do you think the geography played into this selection?
I've always believed that the primary reason that Pope Francis or any of the cardinals who would have been selected was because of the person. The person needed to have certain characteristics, certain gifts and graces of the Holy Spirit. The region could only enhance that. And certainly I think as the other cardinals looked at not only his humility, but also his administrative ability as being a former provincial for the Jesuits, being a former pastor or being a present pastor.
I think it helps that he never had a role in the Vatican. I think they want somebody who's going to come in and clean up the Curia and be able to do it without any past connections or affiliations in there. I think that's an asset, not a negative, right?
I'm sure that during the secret, not just the conclave, but the general congregation beforehand, the cardinals that were involved with the investigation in that probably made things known. So whatever challenges lie ahead for Pope Francis was probably also shared among the cardinals, and they know what the task is at hand. So I think they saw in the man someone who has the holiness, but also someone who has a lot of the other gifts to make that happen. But to have the region, especially in Latin America, in Argentina, and South America, what a great thing that is.
You know, it's interesting. There was a story today, Father, that in Brazil, obviously neighboring Brazil, still the dominant religion, clearly of Catholicism. But if you go back to 1970, 90% of that nation's population was Catholic. Today, it's a little over 60%. Some of that, they're going to Pentecostal churches, and some, you know, are just agnostic now. Yeah. What do you think the church, when they look, and there's different challenges in different parts of the globe, I understand that Africa, they've seen growing populations, but they've seen declining populations in just about everywhere else, and I know it's different in Europe and the United States than it is, let's say, in Latin America, but are they worried more about people turning away from religion overall, or people turning to other faiths because they don't see a place in the church?
I think both. You know, there's certain areas in the church where secularism has moved in, so people feel that, you know, God is an accessory and not necessarily a necessity in life. But in other areas, particularly, say, South America, Latin America, I think what's going on there is that sometimes we get complacent in our lives of faith. Myself as a priest or other people, if we stop praying, if we begin to take grace for granted, chances are we're going to begin to drift away from God and from His church. So sometimes I think that happens in the church, that the church say things might be going so well in a particular area, parish or place, and complacency sets in, and that's a problem because the church always needs to be in an attitude of conversion, daily conversion and renewal, but also the church needs to be constantly reaching out to people, meeting them where their human needs are, but then also nourishing their spiritual needs, which might be known or unknown to the person.
You know, Father, it's interesting. There was a bunch of polls that came out, and the respondents were all American Catholics. So if they are, they're preaching to the converted here. But they asked the questions about connectivity with the church. And there was a few numbers that jumped out to me. 1 in 3 American Catholics say the church is in touch with the views of American Catholics. And while I can't scientifically diagnose this, I spoke about this yesterday with our guest, also of the cloth. And to me, I can't put my finger on it, but it seems in recent years, there's been a lot of politicizing from the pulpit. And I don't think most people expect that the church is supposed to modernize and supposed to change with the times, or even have to agree with them if they believe in choice versus on the abortion issue, or if they believe that the church will come around to gay marriage. They'll accept that there may be differences of opinion, even as it relates with birth control. But it's when it comes from the pulpit so much on Sunday, when it didn't seem to used to as much, and it used to feel more that it was feed the hungry and clothe the naked. And I know the new Pope speaks about that, but it seems that that's driven some people away, that they don't want to hear politics on a Sunday. And it feels that there's more of that than there used to be. It doesn't just seem to be the imagination. You hear that more and more often from the pews.
Possibly it's because culture has changed, and as culture was once maybe supporting faith, supporting religion, and the values that we hold, there was not the same need to maybe challenge people or explain things. But obviously, as society has changed in that, then there becomes the need to maybe address some of these issues. Faith is never meant to be purely a private matter. It's not just God and myself. It's not just me and Jesus that are here. But we have to be part of a church. But that call that Christ gives us is really to go out to the world, proclaim the good news, teach people to observe his commandments and things like that. And that's something that's going to touch people, console them, but it's also probably in every person, it's going to touch a part of our lives that is uncomfortable.
But you know, the part that's uncomfortable for many is that there seems to have been for a long time an absence of transparency, certainly indicated in the sex scandals that happened. And while the church, or at least some leaders in the church, and I believe the biggest victims of this are so many of the people in the cloth, the good people, the priests and the nuns who were caught up in this because the leadership didn't do the right thing, that there's this perception that, wait a minute, the church will preach to me, but they won't practice the same things that they ask. And there hasn't been, while there's been contrition, a real cleansing or acknowledgement about just the depths of it. And it seems that this is going to drag on and on and on until there's a full vetting of it. You must be closer to this. You are closer to this than I am. I mean, it must frustrate you when you guys go back to the rectory and guys say, my gosh, you know, how could they have covered for this guy? How could they have made these hush payments, or the defrocked priest paying him off when he's gone, you know, and then, you know, and the victims here are left, you know, victimized yet again here by a church that they trusted. If anybody thought this was going to go away a few years ago, they're sadly mistaken. You know better than I do. This is going to go on in the near future as well. Some of the stuff's just coming to light. Accountability is always a good thing for all of us. And when accountability is not there, people can get sloppy. And I think just as in our souls we need to shine bright light in there, so too in every facet of our society, and especially our church, that needs to be shown there. I remember when I was in the seminary when some of these things were coming up, some of the scandals back in the 90s. And I remember the disappointment that we had as seminarians to see that this kind of thing was going on, because as the investigation showed, what is it, good 96% or more of the clergy are good, are striving for holiness and trying to do the right thing. So the overwhelming majority are where it needs to be. But there was that disappointment there. But the opportunity to say, okay, yes, let's admit what has gone on, but also at the same time too, let's try and make the church a better place, because the church can be a leaven to society. But sometimes what happens is the end result is not to make the church a better place, but sometimes it's to rip the church apart and destroy it. And that's where I think some of the issues and the problems begin to come about, and why some people don't always understand what's going on. And I know we're heavy here, but in this same poll, when asked if American Catholics believe that priests should be able to be married, almost by 2 to 1, they think they should. And you know this, but maybe a lot of people don't. Priests used to be able to be married in the Catholic Church up until the 13th century, and we know the reasons as to why. That's kind of a broad brush, because we would hold that it goes back to apostolic roots, and that when something is made canonical, put into canon law, it's usually because there's a reason for that. But we also know today you have married priests, people who come over from the Greek Orthodox, and there's other loopholes. Right. I'll use that word. Maybe it's not a fair one. No. My only point is, you deal with this population right now. Do you think in our lifetimes we'll see priests married in larger numbers? In larger numbers? That's a decision for the hierarchy in that. We know that there's not an essential connection between the priesthood and celibacy,
But at the same time, we believe that celibacy really brings out a part of the priesthood that the Western Church has said, we feel that it's an important enough value that not only the Church needs, but also society needs, as to really mandate it for the clergy, not as an imposition, but rather as a gift to have bubble up within us. Christ lived his life solely for his bride, the Church, and lived that life in a celibate way. And we believe that the grace of priesthood also is going to have that gift of celibacy there for the overwhelming majority of priestly
You
candidates.
optimistic that the new pontiff, I'm up against the break here, but you think they chose the right man?
I think they did. I was pleasantly surprised. I was shocked at first, but the more I read about him and the little things that he's done really impressed me.
Father, thank you very much. I appreciate
thanks a lot
few
there,
minutes
Rich.
as usual.
So.
All right, everyone. When we come back, we switch gears and we head to our nation's capital for the latest on the budget battle. We'll tell you what happened or what didn't happen today. That's coming up next.